Mini episode 1574 of the FDH Lounge is brought to you by Sportsology, delivering unconventional columns and webcasts about sports, TV, music, movies, and more. Follow them on the web at sportsology.com.
The FDH Lounge. You'll want to schedule your life around it.
A long time ago, on a gloomy, wet Cleveland spring night, two men stand alone amidst the late-night drizzle. Their voices echo across the vacant station parking lot as they debate the merits of the great American radio show that have been missing for far too long. On that night, an idea was born. That idea became the FDH Lounge. Welcome to the FDH Lounge.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to FDH Lounge mini episode 1574. This is FDH managing partner Rick Morris with you here. And we have a great panel to break down the 2022-2023 NFL playoffs. I'm going to start by mentioning a fellow original dignitary of the FDH Lounge, my old pal from way back, fellow Bobcat, and among other things, our chief futurist here in the FDH Lounge, a man for all seasons, and the man who has been the most regular voice talking football on the show with me over the course of the last couple of years, whether it be the divisional previews leading into the season, NFL draft stuff with our senior editor Jason Jones in the spring, which I know he and I are already looking forward to getting into that. As always, good pleasure to make the hot tag to my good friend Chris Galloway. Chris, great to have you on, buddy. How you doing today?
I'm doing great, Rick. As always, wonderful to be here with you, and would sadly note that as the chief futurist, never gets the Super Bowl pick every year correct. So, so I don't know. Perhaps my credentials as chief futurist should really be in question.
Well, listen, nobody's crystal ball is 100% here, but your record on these things is impeccable, and I do know that you being the first person I can think of anywhere to talk about 3D printing. I mean, you made your bona fides on that one. That was our, I think that was our February 29th time capsule in 2012. And you pretty much made Nate Noy's head and mine explode as you were trying to explain what 3D printing was. So you'll always have that one, my friend.
Well, I'll just try not to be a one-hit wonder.
Nah, you got some other things right over a period of time as well. And if my mind wasn't as tired as it is at the moment, I could probably rattle them off just as easily. But I know that you have. People can take my word for it. So good to have you on. And the other half of our panel here today, you can find him on Twitter at dude_cav, where you can get some football picks over a period of time here. He was very self-deprecating about how they were going last time we had him on. I haven't checked to see if they have picked up at all recently. But our great friend and fellow FDH Lounge dignitary Derek Joseph, we brought him on for a couple of football segments now over a period of time. And as always, I know that he would want us to get the plug in for his better half, the outstanding talent, the $1 trillion baby, Maya Master. Find her at Chaotic Goodest on Twitter and follow the link tree from there. And Derek, good to have you back in. And like I said, any of the picks at dude_cav, don't know if they've picked up since last we talked, but last time you were a little gloomy on them. I hope things have improved since then.
Yeah, no, it's been a struggle, especially with the college football playoffs. That was a rough one. I think I had Michigan and. Obviously Georgia was the easy one, and then NFL wise, it's been rough. So this has been a rough year, but I think it also coincides with one strange year. Obviously, mainly NFL, but as college a little bit too. But it's been an all NFL year that obviously we'll hit up when we start talking about some of the interesting teams that are in this wild card round. But there's the rest of the playoffs to get those bets, get those scores back going, and then there's always next year.
That's right. And that's what a lot of people are left saying. And certainly, be it in your hometown area in Arizona, they're saying there's always next year. On the America's North Coast where I live, they're saying there's always next year. But unlike Chris, I was not emotionally invested in the team this year. So not my pig, not my barbecue, as they say. But we will use here as one of our kind of tools of reference as we go along. You can find it on the main page at fantasydrafthelp.com, our 2022-2023 NFL end of regular season breakdown. And on there, we have a statistical index. We kind of put it all in a blender. We took our own power rankings and we added in a bunch of stats from Pro Football Reference. Some of them advanced stats, some of them regular stats. SRS, margin of victory, strength of schedule, offensive SRS, offensive yards per play, offensive third down percentage, defensive SRS, defensive yards per play, defensive third down percentage. And again, averaged them all out here. In the end, we have a first tier of just Buffalo and a second tier that goes as follows. Philadelphia, San Francisco, Cincinnati, Kansas City, Dallas, Baltimore. They're all grouped up pretty closely. Baltimore's the one surprise as far as being grouped up closely, but they've always scored well on this index. I think the first year we did it was 2019, and I think they were first and New Orleans was second, and famously neither one of those teams was in the Super Bowl that year. So this index always seems to forget the Harbaugh factor as far as giving too much credit, but from there, the third tier, Miami is 8th. You drop down to, as far as playoff teams, Jacksonville 10, drop down again to Minnesota at 14, and the last 4 teams on the third tier, interestingly enough, are all playoff teams. New York Giants, Tampa Bay, LA Chargers, Seattle, they are 19 through 22 on this. So I'm going to start with you on this one here, Chris. As far as thoughts on this, you had texted me when this was released. No real surprises. I kind of agree with you, not least of which since we had just done another one of these indexes about a month or so ago. There were some changes, but not many. All along, interestingly enough, the index, going back to the first one I did at mid-season, the index has been kinder to Jacksonville than you might have thought. So it kind of saw Jacksonville coming, and it's been pretty harsh to the LA Chargers all the way along, which makes it interesting to me that the Chargers are actually road favorites this week, which I find incomprehensible when you look at this thing here. But any thoughts on it, Chris, as far as anything that really kind of jumps out at you when you look at all the teams on here?
Rick, as I mentioned to you off air, I thought there wasn't a lot there to argue with. I think the only thing that, obviously as we move into the playoffs that we've got to keep in mind is the fact that it's like trend lines on where these teams are now versus where they were at the beginning of the year. Somebody like the Philadelphia Eagles through the first 11 weeks, I would say that we would all agree that they're probably not thinking of them as the same team as we were back then. Same thing with the Jaguars. Slower start. They're finishing stronger. As we all know, playoffs, trends matter going into the playoffs. Mm-hmm. So in some ways, I would love to see, taking this analysis and breaking it down and saying, okay, what are these teams doing in the last 5 weeks? That last section of the scheduled regular season going into the playoffs. It might give us a little bit better idea of where we're at in terms of what to expect going in.
That's an excellent point, and I tell you what, the next panel that we do, I know we'll do one before the end of the playoffs. Certainly the Super Bowl, and my preference would be to hit Championship Sunday as well. Take that one from late in the season and compare it to this one, and when we're at that point, just kind of see how it shook out and see what the trend lines ended up indicating. Because I agree with you, they are always significant. And Derek, I know from your perspective, and as central as your thoughts are with football from the handicapping perspective, certainly trends are a major thing that you're always studying at all times. So what were some of the thoughts going through your head when you got a look at this thing here and you were able to see how the teams graded out on this index of all these different categories?
Yeah, I mean, similar to Chris, obviously it doesn't. I don't know how much it obviously accounts with changes in the teams due to injuries and either the slow starts or strong finishes. One thing that I think is worth taking a look at is a lot of these teams' records against the spread, because obviously that to me that's kind of where I look at to kind of denote consistency. So like as low as the Giants and the Chargers are on here, they have they're in the top 5 for best records against the spread, with the Giants actually being tied for number 1 at 12-4, and the Chargers being 11-5-1 against the spread. I know the Chargers were obviously overcoming a lot of injuries. I think they were recovering, and then obviously you lost Mike Williams and I believe Bosa. I don't know if he'll be out for the wild card game. So that might affect them. But the Giants, I mean, the Dable effect is pretty strong with them. So being 12-4 against the spread, I know they may not be world beaters in the statistical category, but being tied for the first tied with the Bengals at 12-4 against the spread. I think I give the Giants a little more credit than what the stats are showing.
Well, let me follow up with you real quickly on that, because as I'm looking at this here, the Giants are only 16th in margin of victory. So that shows me, I think, how well Vegas has done probably setting a number on their games this year, because you would perhaps expect them to be better than middle of the pack in margin of victory if they are that dominant against the spread. But it sounds like they've been going out there and just kind of grinding out the wins against the number week after week.
Well, I think the real, more to your point, would be the Vikings.
Yes,
because the Vikings, obviously, their point differential has been awful all year, and while they have a good regular season record, they're 7-8-1 against the spread. So the Vikings are an odd team, and obviously once we get to the our picks later on in the call here, I'm a little nervous with the Vikings, almost more so than I honestly, part of me says sees the Giants. I still not 100% on that one, but Giants over the Vikings. Just, I mean, with the way the Vikings have been playing and the way the Giants are, I just see that consistency a little more with the Giants. But the Vikings, kind of with their point differential, I don't know if that's sustainable in the playoffs.
Yeah, that is very interesting. And, well, you know what? Along these lines, I think I'll start with you for the next one here. If you're looking at one team out of the consensus top 3 in both conferences here, because you've got Buffalo, Cincinnati, Kansas City in whatever order in the AFC, Philadelphia, San Francisco, Dallas in the NFC. If you're looking for one team to crash the party out of either conference, I thought about going with Minnesota out of the NFC just because of the offensive potential that they have there, and the thought that they might be able to flip a switch. I don't really have confidence in anybody outside of the big 3. I guess if you put a gun to my head, I guess I'd say Tampa, because there's at least the theoretical thing of Brady getting it done. That defense has actually been pretty good through the course of the year. I'd say Tampa, and I'd definitely say Jacksonville in the AFC, because I think they're a real sleeper here. I don't think they can get past the big 3, but if you're going to tell me that there was one team that was going to be doing it, I guess I'd say them. So I'll start with you on this, Derek. Do you like the Giants enough to say that in the NFC? Who'd be your picks in the NFC and the AFC if we're looking for a Super Bowl sleeper outside of the consensus teams?
I mean, there's a part of me that wants to say Seattle. Obviously, if they get through the Niners, they would absolutely be my sleeper pick for the NFC, though I feel like a lot of people would say that as the Niners are the proverbial favorite from the NFC. But Giants, I'm not too far in disagreement with you. I think the Giants are a sleeper, and then obviously my same kind of thing with Tampa with the Brady effect. I think I'm pretty sure he's undefeated against Dallas, though that's not saying much with Dallas's playoff history since the 90s. So I don't disagree too much from you. Minnesota may turn it on. Obviously, they have the best receiver in the NFL. Cousins has had a much better year, and I think O'Connell is probably is in the top 5, maybe even top 3 of best coaches in the NFL right now. So from that third tier, yeah, I wouldn't disagree too much with you. I honestly could see Miami over Jackson. In terms of sleepers from the AFC, I see Miami over Jacksonville if you consider Miami sleeper. I know they're technically in that third tier there. Miami just has those weapons that I think are undeniable. I think having between Tyreek Hill and Waddle, if Tua has a good game and gets hot, I think Miami can maybe reignite that offense that blew everybody away in the first quarter of the season.
Well, I'd love to believe that as somebody who, again, Miami's always been my 1A team, and now occupying the spot of favorite in my mind with the Browns out of the picture with Watson. But watching Skylar Thompson has just taken years off my life. So I just, that guy is just, I know he's a rookie, and we're supposed to make excuses, but that guy is just god-awful. So I'm afraid that the Dolphins are just going to get steamrolled by the Bills. Somebody was saying to me the other day, "Oh, don't the Bills deserve a bye week?" I'm like, "Yeah, they kind of got one." So, assuming they don't lose anybody else to injury, knock on wood, this basically is a bye week from where I sit. But how do you see it, Chris? When we're going outside the consensus teams here, I know you always look at this from some interesting angles as well. Are you seeing anything other than what Derek and I have said thus far about any of the potential teams to break through?
Well, if you're talking about crashing the party and breaking through to the Super Bowl, to me, playoffs are, it's about quarterback play, right?
Yeah, that's why I can't say the Giants because of Danny Dimes. I can't get behind the Giants because of that.
Well, exactly. And I think if I was going to pick somebody from that lower tier, at least in terms of seeding, based on quarterback, I would think maybe the Chargers. I think with a guy like Herbert, if he gets hot, even with, we don't know where Mike Williams is going to be in terms of, availability in these playoffs. But, if you're talking quarterbacks, which I think you are when you talk playoffs, I've got to think Herbert is right there as a guy that suddenly could get hot, win a couple games, and next thing you know, we're all sitting around going, oh, wow, look at that. Didn't see that coming. On the NFC side, because of experience, I think you're right about Tampa. I mean, I wouldn't put them – they shouldn't be even sniffing getting out of the first round.
Right.
Based on the season they've had. But, Brady, can he still keep Father Time at bay and rally that team? I mean, he certainly can in round one, as it relates to Dallas, because Dallas will stub their toe inevitably. Do they do it in round one or round two? And the same thing goes with if he gets through, depending on who wins those other games, he may not be playing like Philadelphia. He could be playing somebody that's beatable. San Francisco, same thing. Everyone's like, yep, that's the team. Again, Brock Purdy, been a great story so far, but an unproven rookie. Playoffs, it's different. Does he crumble? Is there a setback? Somebody is going to get beat in this first round of playoffs that we all go, oh my, I'm really surprised that they got beat down like that. And it's probably going to be in the NFC. So in my mind, those three games are the ones to look at for that first round upset.
And I look at
that happens every single year.
Mm-hmm.
I look at coaching as well. I agree that quarterback play is key in playoffs. I'll never, go against that. But I think coaching is up there just as much, and it's kind of almost why it's what's like how Danny Dimes is holding Rick back. Bowles is holding me back from Tampa. I know Brady basically runs that whole organization, but I don't know. Bowles has proven to not be the best head coach, so that's what worries me about Tampa. Where you jump to Dable in New York, and then obviously the Purdy story. The carriage might turn into a pumpkin soon, but Shanahan's smart and runs a good program that kind of plays off their strengths rather than relying on that quarterback play. A lot of people, and I tend to agree, is you could throw almost any quarterback in Shanahan's system and they'd have the same success Purdy's having. So, the quarterback play, obviously I see it as important, but a lot of these coaches are pretty good, and that's even with Jacksonville with Doug Peterson over there. So I'm kind of looking more at the coaching a little bit here than the quarterbacks, just because there are large divides in parity when you look at that first and second tier compared to third tier. But I think coaching will end up having almost more of a factor than quarterback play.
Well, that's a good point. I want to follow that up with Chris, because one of the things that's holding me back from agreeing with him on the Chargers, listen, I know Brandon Staley is a favorite son of Lake County, Ohio, where I will say, in all fairness, they have the finest stickers on their gas pumps that you'll find anywhere in the state of Ohio. They got a lot going for them there. But, I know he's a favorite son, Chris, and we've even joked about maybe the Brandon Staley coin as a way to prop up the local economy, right? That if you could do some kind of cryptocurrency based around the guy there. But come on, man. That's the thing that's holding me back, because Doug Peterson, I think, definitely has a big coaching advantage in that game Saturday night.
Hey, listen, I'm actually getting. Well, you'll see this later. I'm picking the Jags to win the game.
Okay.
But you asked the question, who can crash the party, right?
Sure.
I think we're all kind of wedded to those top three in each conference. Like, that's probably where we're leaning. So you asked, hey, outside of that top three, who could conceivably crash? I say, if you're going to crash, it's going to be because of a quarterback. It's going to be because of quarterback play. You saw that last year with Cincinnati. Nobody saw them, riding it. But Joe Cool's got a way he's just got a way to overcome. And I would say even overcome some pretty bad coaching at different points in different games in the playoffs, I thought, for the Bengals last year. I mean, Zach Taylor kind of was like, well, they got the Super Bowl. It's like, Joe Burrow dragged them to the Super Bowl.
Yes.
So, again, coaching matters. I agree. And Shanahan, in that sense, has a real advantage in the system that he runs. So, again, I just think Chargers, hot quarterback, maybe. If I was going to pick anybody outside of the top three in the AFC, it'd be the Chargers. So I don't disagree with what's being said about the coaches. I mean, look, we all know it's a symbiotic relationship. It takes two to make that tango work, as evidenced by the Patriots all those years.
Absolutely.
You need great quarterback play, and you need damn good experienced coaching. In that regard, I think Jacksonville is trending all in the right directions. And I actually, when we get there, I mean, big reveal. I mean, I know the Chargers are favored, but I'm picking Jacksonville.
Well, you know what? Since you said that, I'll stay with you for a second here on the AFC side. So you agree with me then that it would be a second-round matchup of Kansas City-Jacksonville. I'm guessing that we're probably not going to disagree that the party probably stops there for the Jags. Although, hey, again, I'm a big Tony Khan mark, AEW all the way. I'd love to see TK get some mileage out of this thing. I'll be happy for them if they make it to the second round, but I don't see it going any further. Probably the game of the year would end up being the game that we didn't get after the Rose Bowl here. I think we are going to get to see, I don't think anybody questions it, we are going to get to see Buffalo and Cincinnati play it out this time, hopefully without any tragic interruptions this time around. And I think that could be the game that basically decides everything here. Or it could be a game like Buffalo-Kansas City last year that leaves the winner so drained that they're ripe to be plucked by the other team, which coincidentally would be Kansas City this year. So that Buffalo-Cincinnati game is going to be very, very pivotal to how it all plays out. Obviously, now there's all the extra storylines involved in it. This one would be in Buffalo because of the way that the seeding goes. I've got the Bills getting through there just because, again, I'm going to defer to the statistics, and they're just so dominant when you look at this index relative to the other teams out there. How would you see it shaken out, Buffalo and Cincinnati, getting to see them actually play at this time?
Well, I agree with you. I think it'll be Jacksonville, Kansas City in round two, and I think Jacksonville fans should be thrilled after last season and how they've clawed their way up, winning the division, getting into the playoffs, winning a first-round matchup, at least getting a home playoff game, first of all, and then traveling to Kansas City. Listen, Jaguars fans, be happy. Yep. Kansas City's going to roll you in that divisional round, but, hey, you have risen like the Phoenix from the ashes, and so be thrilled. I agree. It's Cincinnati and Buffalo, and they'll be playing that thing. Wait, do we decide? Is that now going to be a neutral game, or is that actually in Buffalo?
Apparently,
what is the verdict on all that? I couldn't keep track of it.
I think it's in Buffalo because of what the final records ended up being. It's Buffalo, Kansas City that would be neutral site in the AFC Championship.
All right. Well, here's what I'm going to say. Quarterback play. By all your stats, Buffalo wins that game. I'm picking Joe Burrow. The reality is, in my head, Josh Allen, in the last 7-8 weeks especially, has not been a very good quarterback. And I think that Joe Burrow is Joe Cool, and he finds a way to win ball games. And I think Cincinnati returns to Kansas City for the rematch, for that rematch last year.
That would be incredible. Look, hey, man, from your lips to God's ears, he is the honorary Bobcat there. So certainly Bobcat Nation rooting for Joe Burrow under these circumstances here. I hope you're right, and I hope I'm wrong. How do you see it shaking out, Derek, in the AFC? First of all, I want to get your thoughts on who you think would be playing Kansas City the next week, and then also your thoughts on the Titanic Bills-Bengals game.
Yeah, I mean, not to be too boring, but I mean, I have virtually the same thing. I have Jacksonville over LA, and then obviously, I mean, maybe Jacksonville can make something happen against Kansas City, but I'm not putting money on that. Buffalo and Cincinnati, same thing. I'm on the same page as Chris. I think Joe Burrow is the better quarterback of the two of them, at least right now. It's probably going to be an incredible game, but I have Joe Burrow. I have Cincinnati winning that game. Honestly, barring something crazy in the NFC, I think whoever comes out of that AFC Championship, barring a crazy injury or what have you, will most likely be that Super Bowl champion. I don't even know if Philly's going to make it out of the divisional round, jumping to the NFC. I mean, granted, they're probably the best team, but Dallas or Tampa, Philly probably still has the edge, but I mean, they're pretty hurt right now. I mean, I don't know, but regardless, I have Cincinnati as the Super Bowl winner this year. I mean, if Buffalo can pull something over them, but Joe Burrow, I agree with Chris 100%. Joe Burrow is that dude, and he finds a way to win, and he just has this. He has that same mentality that a young Brady had, where he's going to figure it out, and he doesn't really falter under pressure. Not that Josh Allen doesn't have those qualities, but there's just a swagger and a moxie about Burrow that, and him making it last year and not getting the win, I think that obviously just put a fire under him. So I really don't disagree with the picks.
All right, well, you anticipated then for the AFC Championship game then. So you spoiler alert, you said Cincinnati to take it over Kansas City. I want to get both of your thoughts on that. And again, I've got Buffalo over KC on what would be a neutral field. It wouldn't be a neutral field on either of your scenarios. It would be in Kansas City if they're playing Cincinnati. I'll start with you, Derek, since I know where you're going with this on the pick. Obviously, revenge factors into this very much so after the way that KC gagged it away a year ago, but clearly you don't see that as being a very defining factor in what would be this rematch.
Yeah, no, and I think it's a completely different rematch. I mean, I think we talked about it last time I was on. This is not the same Kansas City. They're obviously still an unbelievable team. Mahomes is certainly still just as unbelievable he is, but I think them, not having Tyreek Hill takes a significant weapon away from that offense. They don't really have the cheat code button that they've had the last couple of years. It obviously hasn't hurt them too much based on them getting that top seed, but I don't think that's. I see them still. They're not going to be. They're not the same team that they came in last year, and I think they may be a little. I don't know. Nervous going in just based on, maybe not nervous is the right word, but they haven't had the same season they've had. And, even though they had a strong finish, Cincinnati had a strong finish too. And, just to echo what Chris was saying, again, I think Joe Burrow just, I think he's just that dude this year. From where they started to where they ended, just Cincinnati, I think they have the edge there.
One of the things that would make me agree with you if that was the matchup is looking at strength of schedule here. Cincinnati 8th, Kansas City 28th. Many of the teams that are the top contenders in both conferences have a relatively weak strength of schedule number because, they account for a good chunk of the strength in their own division and don't play themselves. Cincinnati managed to play enough top teams over the course of the year. They kind of stand out in that regard, albeit Buffalo does too. Buffalo was 11th in strength of schedule. Chris, how do you see it? Is this going to be the three of us picking all different teams to come out of the AFC, or do you agree with Derek about Cincinnati over Kansas City?
I'm sticking with Joe Burrow.
Okay.
I generally agree. I think that, you look at that game that got canceled against Buffalo. Cincinnati was winning that game. I think they were going to win that game. And again, Cincinnati going into Kansas City, they're not going to be intimidated about that. Like last year, we all thought Cincinnati, their Cinderella run was over, and that Kansas City would flex their dominance at home, AFC Championship game. It was a great run, pat the Bengals on the head, and send them home. Didn't work out that way, and then they got within a couple minutes of winning the Super Bowl. So I in fact, I have the Bengals going back to the Super Bowl. because right now I think Joe Burrow is the quarterback that I want to ride.
Very interesting, and I would agree with that. I think there is a lot to be said in that. I believe in the end, I think the emotional lift that Buffalo is on at this point, I think it's going to be working for them. I think they're going to get a great amount of momentum from just, unfortunately, from my perspective, curb stomping the Dolphins. So that's where I differ with you guys. I have Buffalo coming out the AFC. In the NFC, I think we're probably in agreement on the three teams that look to dominate that side of the bracket. I will say that I have Minnesota getting by the Giants. So, Derek, I think that's probably where I'm differing from you. So, if it was to be the Giants, you could get a different matchup in the divisional round here, because then it would be the Giants going into play Philadelphia in that game, and it would be San Francisco-Dallas, a rematch of last year. And wouldn't that be interesting, having that rematch, albeit in a different place? But I've got it being San Francisco-Minnesota matchup there. I've got the Niners advancing to the NFC Championship game. I'm going to say Philadelphia over Dallas. Now, you had said, Derek, that you had some doubts about Philadelphia possibly getting through a third game with Dallas. I'll forego the very easy line about how it would be convenient for you in that household to say that Dallas would have the advantage over Philadelphia. But as far as how it goes, like I said, I'm assuming based on your comments that you would see the Giants in that round. But how would you see those two games shaken out in the NFC in the divisional round?
Yeah, so I see the Giants against Philly, and obviously, like you alluded, the Niners against Dallas. I think from just a matchup point, that's the more fun matchup. Both divisional rivals, both played each other a lot this year. Philly and Dallas, I mean, a lot of it would depend on how that wild card game goes. If Dallas, dominates Tampa pretty well, then I'd probably slightly give them the edge over Philly. But no one played yet. I'll go ahead. Obviously, Giants are my pick over Minnesota. So them against Philadelphia, I think they have a good chance. If in that game, I think it's a close game. I'd probably still give the edge to Philadelphia, but I don't think it'll be a blowout by any means. And I could see a scenario where the Giants somehow sneak past Philadelphia. And then from the other side, San Francisco, and then that would be Dallas. Same sort of thing. From a matchup point, I think that's exciting because you have two phenomenal defenses, and then you have two quarterbacks that are, Purdy obviously is the Cinderella story. Dak is on and off, just how he decides to play that day. But with the strength of San Francisco's defense, being able to probably stop the two-headed monster that Dallas has with Pollard and Zeke, I could see Dallas coming over them as well. So I almost going opposite of you. There's maybe it's just the me loving the underdogs and from a betting standpoint, but I kind of see a scenario where both Philly and San Francisco could go down. As much as everyone loves the Purdy story, I think at some point the Purdy story has to come to an end.
That is plausible, and I will say this about San Francisco and Dallas. I like to look for these numbers that just make me just kind of get very intrigued. And on Dallas, their offensive yards per play is a little more mediocre than you would think, only ranked 15th in the league. And then you look at San Francisco, and their third down defense is only 16th in the league, certainly more mediocre than you would think. So that's one of those things where both of those teams have a little bit of a flaw there that possibly can be exploited the other way. In the NFC, Chris, how are you seeing it break down as far as the divisional round, what the matchups would be, and who you'd see coming out of it?
Well, I am so conflicted and torn on the NFC. It is not as cut and dry to me as the NFC is, for all the reasons that both you gentlemen have outlined. Because these teams are so Jekyll and Hyde, right? I mean, Philadelphia, great start to the season, end of the season, not so much. San Francisco, man, they look like they've got it all together, but they're going into the playoffs with a rookie quarterback who was the last pick in the draft. There's part of me that just sits there and says, there's no way that just continues, right? You know, they're not riding the rookie last pick in the draft to the Super Bowl. I just struggle with it. Same thing with Minnesota, right? They've got to be the worst 3 seed in the history of the NFL.
Yeah.
Point differential screams that at us, right? And so again, Tampa Bay broken down, old. You know, they got all kinds of problems, but they got Tom Brady. Dallas, on paper, they look better. But you've got, you know, a fool like Mike McCarthy as head coach, and Dak Prescott will shit the bed at any moment. So I look at this entire lineup and I just go, dear God, like what? I mean, you could make an argument for every combination in any way, and I could sit back and say to you, well, yeah, that does make sense. That does make sense, you know. But I guess if I've got to do something, I'm going to take Dallas beating Tampa Bay. And I'm going to, you know, one of those 2 other games is going to be an upset. And I'm going to go with the Giants because I feel like the San Francisco story's got like one more round in it, right? Like there's just one more play there. I don't believe, you know, Geno Smith started the season great and he's tapered off. It's hard for me to believe in the Seahawks. Ability to beat that defense in round 1 on the road. So I will go with the Giants and the Daboll effect and that lousy, you know, point differential with the Vikings and figure that's going to be our upset. So, you know, I've got Dallas coming out of there. The Giants then losing to Philadelphia, and with San Francisco and Dallas. I've got to go. I still got to go San Francisco because I don't believe in my Cowboys.
Yeah.
So the Brock Purdy story carries you then all the way to the NFC Championship game, where Philadelphia finds a way and goes into the Super Bowl to play Joe Burrow and the Bengals.
Wow. Well, and that's right. You're a Cowboys guy, too. I got to say this. I got to circle back to the NFC North, and this is just the way my mind works because coming into the season, both of us were wrong when we were doing our divisional previews here. I was wrong that Detroit was not going to be as successful as they were under Coach Medium Shirt, so I take my hat off to you. You didn't see Minnesota coming, and again, that being said, I freely admit, and in this week's preview of just our games that's being recorded, just the wild card games, I'm labeling Minnesota as the worst 14-3 team in pro sports history. So you're not wrong about that, Chris, but when you got your little shots in there on Minnesota, it somewhat reminded me of when my dad would send out these, you know, the email chain things here, and then I would he got mad when I would send out the Snopes things debunking them. Actually, that's not true and whatever. And you know, my dad would always claim that there was like a larger truth to it. Well, Bill Gates should have said that to those elementary school kids, you know. So that's what you seem to be doing with Minnesota, Chris, because you picked against them at the beginning of the year. You're not wrong that they're not nearly as good as their record, but I still had to chuckle a little bit when you were burying them.
Well, I mean, somebody's losing in that first round.
Yeah.
That shouldn't.
Yeah.
And I just, to me, it goes, okay, is it Vikings or is it San Francisco? Who do I believe in less? Well, I believe less in the Vikings, so I will pick them to be the upset that everybody goes, oh my goodness, how did that happen? And as far as Cowboys at San Francisco in the divisional, I just have no faith in my Cowboys. I mean, I just have none. You know, and maybe at this point it's like being the PTSD Browns fan that I also am.
Yeah.
Right? Like I expect everything to go wrong, even though I, dare and hope and dream. And I'm the same way with the Cowboys. It's like, they can look great at times, and then other times you go, I don't understand is anyone even coaching this team? So I don't have any faith in them. So that San Francisco defense is good enough to shut down anybody, and I think they can get past an inconsistent Cowboys team in the divisional. I think they run out of gas with the rookie quarterback against Philadelphia on the road, but that's to me the most likely scenario of it playing out. Now, wouldn't it be interesting if Joe Burrow gets to the Super Bowl and has to play the NFC West again in San Francisco instead of the Rams this time. That would be an interesting wrinkle. But I don't see a rookie quarterback getting his team all the way into the Super Bowl. I just don't see it.
The third Bengals.
So none of us see a world where Seattle wins. Because I realized that we completely glossed over the Geno Smith story, and I don't. I would not be surprised if Seattle somehow pulls it off. I don't think it's going to happen, but I wouldn't be that surprised if Pete Carroll and Geno Smith somehow make it happen. I don't see them going in. If they make that upset, I don't see them going anywhere further. But I don't think that, just like Chris said, all these NFC games, you could make an argument for either side. But who knows? Maybe the Geno Smith magic will come back.
Well, listen, you have a point that you give Pete Carroll that third bite at the apple on a team that he knows and a system he knows to coach against and has to play against. I mean, that is one of those. You talk about coaching. That is one of those dangerous matchups, right?
Yeah.
Like, because we all do just go, well, San Francisco's just better. Well, okay, but I think and again, that's the kind of think about how that would happen, where none of us would be truly shocked if Seattle, on their third bite at the apple, got it done, right? But what that does then is sends them to Philadelphia, and then if we're right about Dallas and Tampa Bay, or even if we're not, then that sends the Dallas-Tampa Bay, match up with New York. They get to then be home against the Giants if the Giants win, right?
Yeah.
So I mean, that's if you're the Cowboys, right? Like, beat Tampa Bay. If Seattle wins, suddenly, hey, now you've got maybe the Giants at home in Dallas. Now you go, okay, now I can see Dallas getting to the NFC Championship game. Like, that's a real thing. And I think what you illustrated with your Seattle comments is just exactly how messy the NFC is and the way this thing could break. Certainly not as clean as we think everything will be in the AFC.
Yeah, there's more potential for chaos over here, obviously, and so you're saying Philadelphia to come out of the NFC, which I agree with. And by the way, thankfully, I don't think we get this. I think we're pretty well understood on this show. But for anybody that ever thinks we're being homers for any of our teams here, I'm already on record as saying my Fish are going to get steamrolled, maybe by a historic margin against Buffalo. You've said what you've said about the Cowboys here, Chris. So we're certainly capable of being objective here in all of these things. So, Derek, let's hear from you on your combo for the NFC Championship game, how you see it playing out. I'm sure you're not with us here on Philadelphia coming out of the NFC, but what do you see?
Yeah, I don't know. I think the injuries to Philadelphia, I think they're more hurt than they're letting on. No pun intended with hurt and hurts, but I don't see Philly making it out of there. I think it's either going to be San Francisco with riding the Purdy story, or I think if some of these upsets, like either if the Giants, if Seattle, New York, or Tampa get the upset, I could see any one of those teams making a magical run, at least through the divisional and getting there to San Francisco. Honestly, a lot of my predictions for the NFC are going to be what I see wild card, but just looking now, I don't know. I guess I'll pick San Francisco to come out of it, barring how the wild card shakes out. New York could make a run, but I don't think they have the talent to get past a defense like San Francisco. Seattle, obviously, if they beat San Francisco, you could see it, but I'm obviously going to pick San Francisco over them. And then I think Tampa doesn't. I mean, you have the Brady effect, but I don't think they have the talent to get over San Francisco's defense. And then obviously Dallas, I think Mike McCarthy will be his brain will be in a pretzel going against Shanahan and all the crazy stuff he does with that offensive scheme. So I'll go ahead and make my pick with San Francisco. I'll ride the Purdy story, but my heart tells me that's not going to be the case.
Well, and I agree with you about Mike McCarthy, and dare I say, if you were to live stream the viewing experience, watching Mike McCarthy melt down, that would be good entertainment for the rest of us on Twitter. But I agree with you. McCarthy's going to McCarthy here, and that's the main reason I'm picking the outcome I'm picking in that game. And the statistical odds are highly with you Derek, the numbers don't lie. Since you've picked Cincinnati to come out of the AFC, this would be the Bengals' 4th Super Bowl appearance and a whopping 3rd time against San Francisco. So, yes, you pretty much have to go with them, albeit could have been 4 for 4 last year if they had gotten past the Rams, but which would have been the greatest statistical anomaly of all time. So, again, from my end of regular season breakdown here, I already have it out there that I've got Buffalo over Philly in the Super Bowl here. I am going chalk as far as the top seeds in this. Neither of you guys is. So we'll start with you, Derek, here, following up on your thoughts about this Cincinnati, San Francisco, how you see it breaking down.
Cincinnati, 100%. I mean, I'm sure Chris will say the same thing. I believe in Burrow more than Purdy. Though if San Francisco gets there, you never know. The Purdy effect would be a great story, and for anyone that has their tinfoil hats on, maybe if the NFL's pulling the strings, maybe there's a part of them from a theatrical standpoint would want the Mr. Irrelevant to win the Super Bowl. But tinfoil hats off, yeah, I'm riding with Cincinnati and Joe Cool.
Well, yeah, and having him for the 3rd time being the charm against San Francisco, having him at quarterback over Boomer Esiason and Ken Anderson, a definite upgrade for Cincinnati this time around at quarterback, and an edge that they didn't have either time against San Francisco previously without Joe Montana. The role of Joe Montana is being played by Brock Purdy. That's good luck with that one, Niners. So, Chris, how would you see it shaking out? You have it being Cincy, Philadelphia, am I right?
That is correct. And as much as I love Joe Burrow, I'm going Eagles.
Okay, wow.
I think if the Eagles can get healthy enough with Hurts and get there, they will find that means they will have found their earlier in the season form. And if they find that and are able to handle the loss of guys like Lane Johnson and stuff. Again, there's a question mark there, but I think if the Eagles get there, I like them as a team because of the dual threat of Hurts more so than the Bengals. But I think we see an almost identical Super Bowl like last year. Bengals have a chance, they're in it, and then they lose in the last few minutes. No fault of Joe Burrow's. Then we've got ourselves a little mini 1990s Buffalo Bills situation.
Very interesting. So we've got 3 different Super Bowl picks here. I'm saying Bills, and Derek is saying Bengals, and you're saying Eagles, Chris. And that is a thing where, if it plays out that way, again, I can't wait to see what the 30 for 30 one day is going to be on Howie Roseman here as Philly GM. I've always said that he is the J.R. Smith of general managers, that sometimes you want to manually disembowel him, and sometimes he's your favorite ever. And for the Philly people, they've ridden the roller coaster the last couple of years with him. And if he can get them to a 2nd Super Bowl, I can't even imagine that. You would think he'd be a made man for life there, regardless of whatever his next stupid moves as a follow-up would be. His inevitable stupid next moves. But any other thoughts here on this? I'm going to start with you, Chris. Any other thoughts on this year's playoffs we didn't get to?
I think the one thing is probably saying goodbye to Tom Brady.
Mm-hmm.
I know everyone is like, oh, he's going to go to San Francisco, or oh, he's going to go to Vegas, or Miami. Are any of these teams really going to put off developing a quarterback potentially of the future so they can saddle to a 46-year-old who had an okay year? Like, I just don't buy it. I think at this point, Tom may not want to retire, but I think that there's a real probability that NFL teams go, you know what, if this was Tom 3-4 years ago, we'd still be willing to ride that train. Are we really willing to give Tom Brady a 2-year deal at 46? And tell Tua or tell Brock Purdy or whoever to, hit the bench. Like, I struggle. And I suppose the only real possibility there might be the Raiders because of Josh McDaniels and because they're pushing out Derek Carr. But that remains to be seen. So I guess just, this may be it for Tom Brady. And if it is, I think that's what a historic run it's been.
Yeah, and you were pointing out some time ago that this time was going to come here, and you've been calling it that there was going to be a year like this coming up. I will say from my narrow, selfish perspective that Tom Brady, if he leaves, is going out on top as the quarterback for the Donovan Mitchell welcome wagon, the champions in my fantasy football league here this year. So Tom Brady at least was carried by the rest of my team to a championship, if nothing else. So the man goes out on top, as he deserves to with his career. Derek, any other thoughts you have on this year's playoffs?
I think the biggest thing from the NFC side is I think you were going to see at least one, most likely one, maybe two. We're going to see who's going to be the big dog in the NFC for a few years. I don't think anyone looked at LA last year and say, oh, they're going to be the juggernaut for years to come, especially with an ailing Stafford. I'm hoping the NFC will start to shake out kind of how the AFC has, where you have the juggernauts of Cincinnati, Buffalo, and Kansas City duking it out every year. I think we'll see that we'll at least see where the NFC's going. If Philly makes it all the way, they're obviously Jalen Hurts is a young guy. You can obviously say the same thing in San Francisco. San Francisco will be interesting to see how that, if they make it, to the NFC Championship or higher, it'll be interesting to see how they shake things out with their carousel of quarterbacks between Trey Lance, Purdy, and Garoppolo. I think that'll be the most interesting thing from the NFC side, of seeing who's going to be at least one of the juggernauts in the NFC for a few years to come. The NFC seems to be it's finding itself right now after I think they had some dominance over the last decade, whereas the AFC has found itself in those three teams. So I'm curious how the NFC shakes out, because as we talked about the last 15 minutes, I don't think any of us would bet the bank on any of those teams in the NFC.
No, I agree with that. And as far as what you said about the Rams, that's absolutely true. Even as they were doing it last year, I saw them as just a supercharged version of a Stars and Scrubs team, which is partially because of the way that they built that team and foregoing a lot of their draft picks in lieu of high-priced guys to come in here. And they had the rare kind of Stars and Scrubs team that they could take over the top. And then this year, of course, we see them for the North Korean Potemkin village that they truly were, because they just fell apart altogether. It just a good stiff wind blew them over this year. And, I agree with you, Derek. I don't think we'll be saying the same thing about any of these teams in the NFC in the years to come. So I think we have seen in the NFC a little bit of a shaking out of what we're going to see the next couple of years up there. And, again, it has been a wonderful discussion here. For my money, the best preview you're going to get anywhere with you two guys here for the 2022-2023 NFL playoffs. Chris Galloway, Derek Joseph, thank you so much. And thank you, everybody, for tuning in to FDH Lounge Mini Episode 1574.